Well, thank you for joining me for the Alex on Tech and TechAdvice.life video interview. Today I have a topic which is definitely not related to technology, but we'll try and squeeze some in. I'm with former New York Mafia boss, Michael Franzese. He's visiting Australia for a couple of big events called In Conversation with Michael Franzese, and that's going to be Friday the 6th of October at the Melbourne's Palais Theatre and Sydney's Enmore Theatre on Sunday the 8th of October. Tickets available at Ticket Tech, both hosted by Gary Jubelin. But look, Michael, Mr. Franzese, welcome to the program.
Nice to have me. Thank you.
Yes, very wonderful to have you here. Now, a lot of people have seen movies about the mob and might have a romanticized idea of a life of organized crime. But you've actually lived it and breathed it, and as you'll explain later, have walked away from it. So what was a life of crime really like?
Well, I grew up in it because my dad was a prominent figure. He was the underboss of one of the 5 New York Mafia families, the Colombo family. So I grew up in the life. And, I can honestly say there's good and bad in everything. When I got into the life, I had a very idealistic view of the lifestyle, very attractive, brotherhood among men. I got your back, you got my back. Wherever you go in the world, don't ever worry about anything. Somebody will always be there to have your back. Don't ever worry about your wife, your daughter, your sister, your mother. Nobody's ever going to bother them. That's very attractive to a man. And there was that part of that life. But listen, it's the street life. There's a lot of treachery. There's a lot of stuff that goes on. So you got to deal with both. And I certainly had my share of it because I became very high profile myself, major target of law enforcement. And so I know both sides of it.
Now, before I ask you more about your life, what are the types of stories that you'll be speaking about at both of the events that you're hosting? And obviously, it's a lot more than what we're talking about today.
Yeah, it's a lifestyle that people are not familiar with. They saw movies, and this is their impression of it, which gives somewhat of a view of the life. But I actually lived it, And I'm going to be telling stories. Look, I was very high profile, and I was very active on the streets. So I was involved with John Gotti and Fat Tony Salerno, Paulo Castellano, and guys from Philadelphia crew. And so we'll be telling stories about what the life is really about, what the business of that life is really about, how we did control, how we messed up, what really happened. And then, there's a lot of interest with people, how I got out of it and how I was able to make this transition and how my family was able to get through it. So there's both sides of that people have a real interest in, and they're going to hear a lot about it in both of these events.
So is this your first trip to Australia?
It's actually my 3rd or 4th.
Yeah.
And I love the country. People have always been great. The events have always went well. And, I love it, so we were happy to come back.
Is there an Australian mafia that the US Mafia is connected to?
There is a presence here, and, we're somewhat connected all around the world. I mean, there's a mafia in Italy, then various places, South America, the United States, obviously here in Australia, and we have that connection. Doesn't mean that we're doing business constantly, but we're all one. We all take the same oath.
Like you said, you were brothers.
Yes.
Yeah. So what were the types of dangers that you faced as a mob boss?
Well, listen, you're told straight out, when you come into that life, if you disobey the rules, you can pay for it with your life. There's serious consequences involved. And unfortunately, in my 20-some-odd years, I've seen people succumb to that. So you're facing that. You're a constant target of law enforcement, so you have both sides to deal with. You got to stay in line, and you got to try to stay on the street and not in jail. So there's a lot to have to deal with on a daily basis. For me, I was arrested, I think, 18 times. I was indicted 7 times. I had 2 federal racketeering cases.
It's more than Trump.
Well, so far, yeah. I got 3 more on him, but that guy, he may catch up to me the way it's going to the United States. But so I had my fill of law enforcement, constantly under surveillance throughout my whole tenure in that life. And then I had my dealings on the street. But fortunately, I had success in that life. Money is power. Not unlike anywhere else in life, but if you do well financially there, you make a lot of friends.
Now, obviously, you're going to talk about more of this at both of the events that you're hosting, but how did your crime organization avoid getting caught, which makes me wonder how corrupt the authorities really were?
Well, look, there are corrupt authorities, no question. I had my contacts that were able to benefit me on the street. But they were also inept in a way because I ran a fraudulent operation for almost 8 years and they couldn't figure it out. Yeah. We were always one step ahead of them. So yeah, both sides. You use them when you can and you avoid them when you have to.
Yeah. So how does the way you did crime back then compare with today's criminal groups, motorcycle gangs and the rest?
Well, listen, Mafia Cosa Nostra in America, we were very organized. We were very disciplined. We had a real structure, something that these other groups really lack. And look, we had the charisma and the connections to exert a lot of control. So, look, when it comes to organized crime, everybody on the planet looks at the Mafia as the elite group. And I have to say we were.
And I heard before in answering another journalist's questions, I mean, you were connected to the unions, you had political connections, it went sky high up to the White House.
We controlled the unions in America. We started the unions in America, and we controlled them up until the mid-'80s when the racketeering laws put a major dent in that control.
Yeah. Now, again, you're going to talk about this in a lot more detail at your events, but why did you leave this life of crime?
I always say this. I don't glorify my former life, even though I had a lot of friends there, and I don't knock people in that life. I was one of them. Why would I knock them? But it's a destructive life. It's not conducive to a good family life. My family was destroyed as a result of my dad's involvement in that life. Brothers, sisters, mother, destroyed. And every family of every member of that life undergoes the same fate. And so I met a young girl. She's now my wife of 38 years. When I met her, I said, am I going to marry this girl and destroy her life too? I said, I got to make a choice. And so I left the life strictly to preserve my family.
Yeah.
That was it.
Love conquers all, eh?
That's it.
So how did you manage to stay alive then and all these years later?
One of the horrors of that life is you make a mistake, your best friend walks you into a room, you don't walk out again. And unfortunately, in my 20 plus years, I've witnessed that, right? So I said, look, I'm intimately familiar with that life. I was at a very high level. I was a capo regime, which is a street boss, and I knew the life intimately well. So when I left, I said, well, they're not going to walk me in a room. They're going to have to work to get me. I moved out of the city. I moved out to the West Coast. It's one thing to walk somebody in a room.
Yeah.
It's another thing to send a hit squad across the country and try to kill somebody and get away with it, especially when somebody's knowledgeable of it, like I was.
Yeah.
Changed my whole routine. Didn't create patterns in my life. Didn't walk my dog every morning at 7 o'clock. Didn't go to the same restaurant every Tuesday night. Stayed out of clubs. I was very disciplined.
And
because
prepared.
I knew. Yeah, because I never sold my former associates short.
Yeah.
And I had one or two pretty dicey situations that I was able to avoid. So, and then, I'm a person of faith, and I believe God had a different purpose in my life, and it's crystal clear to me now.
Well, you're now a speaker.
I am.
Yeah. I've heard you saying before that you never thought that's something you'd do.
Never thought that in a million years.
Yeah.
And the way that evolved is just, it's a crazy story, but here I am.
And I'm sure you'll discuss more about that at the events,
I will.
which is a great reason to go. Now, you were also portrayed in the celebrated movie Goodfellas by actor Joseph Bono. So how accurate was the portrayal?
I'm in the movie theater. That movie comes out when I get out of prison, right? I tell my wife, let's go see Goodfellas. I knew all those guys, kind of nostalgic, right?
Yeah.
And she don't like to watch these movies, my wife. I lived enough, I don't have to watch it. Oh, come on, honey, come with me. So she comes. I'm eating my popcorn. You know how the movie starts out? Very graphic, right?
Yeah.
I said, I think I made a mistake bringing my wife here, right? So at one point, she looks at me and she says, is this what you guys really did? Was that your life? I said, honey, it's a movie. They make things up. It's Hollywood. Watch the movie, right?
Yeah.
No sooner I say that, boom, there's Michael Franzese. She looks at me and I said, come on, honey, let's go, right? We left. I didn't know what else they were going to do.
Yeah.
The way it turns out, that was a different crew. I knew Henry Hill and I knew Jimmy Burke really well. I knew Paulie Vario, but that wasn't my crew. So the writer, Nick Pileggi, I called him up because I know him too. I said, hey, Nick, why'd you stick me in that movie? He said, well, you had name value. You knew all those guys. I said, well, could you at least have gotten them to say my name correctly? They said Franzese. I don't know what they said, but anyway, that's the story. So, I mean, it was a minor part in there, but I don't know if the guy looked like me or not, but anyway, it's brought me a lot of attention, I tell you, that one movie, because the movie was so well received.
Yeah, no, it was a classic for sure. Now, given the domination of technology today and its relative primitivity in decades past, how was technology used in your time to keep the organised crime groups organised and profitable, or was it really not a big factor?
Technology was part of the downfall of my former life. It was used against us.
Yeah.
I'll tell you how unsophisticated we were. When we got cell phones, everybody said, talk on a cell phone because they can't tap the phone.
Yeah.
Well, they tapped the phone better than they did regular phone, right?
Yeah.
A lot of guys got caught with their conversations on the phone. not good in technology. Hopefully they've gone beyond that right now, and they're not talking on phones and they're not using technology. Technology for the street is no good. No good. People can't hear your conversations.
Well, I mean, just talking about that, it was in the news over the last couple of years that international crime groups were taken down by an encrypted messaging app called Anon. So what were the types of stings in play at your time, given Al Capone was taken down for tax evasion and not any mob crimes as such?
Well, you know, in days of Al Capone, there was so much corruption on the street, he owned half the police force, so it was very hard to get him for any street crimes. You know, everybody was on the payroll.
Yeah.
You paid a lot more from him than you did from the government.
Yeah.
But, you know, the tax laws in our country, they go after everybody, the IRS. You know, that's the way that you try to get you. So, and that was the only way they could have got him. I mean, St. Valentine's Day Massacre. It wasn't him. He was in Florida, right, smoking a cigar. But we know what really happened. So.
But you mentioned you were arrested 8 times, or a bunch of times you were in prison. 18 times, yeah. Yes. And you were indicted 7 times and in prison. So how did they, in a nutshell, what were a couple of examples of how they caught you? And again, I'm sure you'll be talking about it a lot more at your events.
In that life, the only way they catch you, with all that technology and everything else they got going for them, they need informants.
Right.
That's it. They need cooperatives and they need informants. And unfortunately, I'll tell you why my life fell apart in a big way. It's not the same. Because one of the things that kept guys in line was fear. Fear of retaliation. You make a mistake, you're going to get killed. You're going to get walked into a room, you're done, right? What happened when the racketeering laws came out, the fear of the street was transferred to the fear of the government. Because now the government said, hey, you know what? You're going to get no bail. We're going to lock you up. When we convict you, you're going to get 50 years, no more parole. You're going to spend the rest of your life in prison. Unless you want to talk to us, don't worry about it. We'll give you some money. We'll put you in a witness protection program. We're going to put your guys away forever. You don't have to worry about them. So the fear of the street was transmitted to the fear of the government. That was the destruction of the life.
Well, I often say that the government is the biggest mob crime family of all.
Especially now.
Especially now.
I wrote a book, Mafia Democracy.
Yeah, is that the book over there? Let's have a look.
Let me show everybody.
Please.
Got to do something. Got to show the book.
Absolutely.
There it is, right? Okay. There's no fluff in this book. This is reality. As a matter of fact, when I wrote the book, I said, what am I doing? These people are going to come after me because it's so true. Our government is operating under the Machiavellian ideology now.
Yeah.
It's all about money and power. Trust me when I tell you that.
So what else do we need to know about you and your life that I haven't already asked about before I get onto some closing questions?
Well, I'm not going to tell you because we're going to have a show Friday.
Well, that's true.
You got to buy a ticket.
Absolutely, absolutely.
No, you'll see it. No, there's a lot more. I'll tell you one of the most satisfying things. People, you realize that people are struggling with something all over the world because Q&A is great. Talk about the movies. Where's Jimmy Hoffaberry? How many guys did you kill? Where's all your money? I get all those questions. Okay. But they also want to know, Michael, how did you turn your life around? How did your wife stay with you? Why, you know, how did it affect your kids? How have you been able to forgive yourself? How do you forgive others? All those questions, which tells me that people want to be transformed in their life. A lot of people are struggling. So you'll be surprised how many of those questions I get, which are the most satisfying, because you try to be an example to people.
So what's your message to aspiring young criminals today?
First of all, there's 2 messages. Number 1, remember, in this life, you are who you hang out with. You hang with the wrong crowd, you're going to be known to be the wrong person, and of course, they're going to influence you. Second, who you're accountable to in life, that's the path that's going to be directed to you. When I was on the street, accountable to my oath, to my boss, I was a criminal. Now I'm accountable to my God, my wife, my children. Stay off, I'm on the right track.
So a question I ask everybody is, what was the first computer you remember using?
Oh, gosh. The first computer was a Mac, of course. They don't need any more business. They got enough. But it was a Mac computer. I'm not technologically brilliant. You know, I get my emails. I do a few little things, and I'm happy. Mostly it's a phone. You don't need a computer anymore.
That's right,
It's a phone.
So my second last question is, can you please share some of the best advice that you've received in life to help you get where you are today?
Yes. Be a good listener. Don't run in your mouth. Speak when you're spoken to. Listen. Be a good listener. And 3 things that saved me in prison. My father, God rest his soul, very bright, he said to me, son, when you go to jail, remember 3 things. 3 words that are going to save you a lot of headaches. What? Please, thank you, excuse me. Because everybody in prison, they got no respect on the street. They want all the respect there. I seen things happen, you know, you're cutting with somebody on a line and boom, before you know it, you got a beating. And they don't care. They're all doing time. They don't care who you are. Please excuse me. Thank you. I never had a problem in prison with anybody. The only problem I had was keeping people away from me. Because everybody wanted, they want to go into business with you when you're doing time. Everybody in prison, they all come to you as funny. Oh, don't worry about it. The next time I know how I'm going to do better. I'm not going to get caught. And I say, well, who did you learn that from? Everybody in here got caught. What did they teach you, right? Right. Stupid. But anyway, good advice. Keep your mouth shut. Don't, because so many guys get themselves in trouble by just blurting and talking things. Yeah. Be a good listener in life.
Excellent advice. And as I say, loose lips sink ships.
Sink ships.
So what is your final message to the viewers and the readers? Besides buy a ticket and come along and see you well,
that's the main message
Sydney and
right
Melbourne.
now.
Yeah.
They'll have another message that night. But no, we're going to have a good time. Look, we've had events here before. They've been terrific. I enjoy being around people. We're going to answer all the questions. You're going to get a real understanding of that life. You're going to get an understanding of my life. And we're going to take pictures. We got a VIP section. We're going to do photographs. We're going to have a blast. So come that night, both nights. We're going to have a great time.
Michael Franzese, thank you very much for your time and best of luck with your events here in Australia.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Bye-bye.